Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon in some time zones. My name is Carolina Rendeiro. I am the CEO of Connect to Global, but I am also privileged to be the Honorary Consul of Portugal here in Miami. My background is where we were all supposed to be today, here at the Biltmore Hotel in Coral Gables, Florida. The weather looks the same as it does in the photos, so for those of you that probably are already having cold weather, we are still enjoying this here in Miami, and we welcome all of you. I have a very distinguished panel of not only friends, but really leaders here in the Miami community, and we all work very closely together. So I'm just gonna do a short introduction of them now, and then we're gonna go just in alphabetical order so nobody gets upset on who's more important or not. They're all very important, especially to me, and I think all of you will find what they bring to the table here for our PALCUS conference is gonna be beneficial to everyone. So I'm gonna start with Alice Ancona. She is the Senior VP and the COO of the World Trade Center here in Miami. And the World Trade Center, as an association, all of us know about them, stimulates trade and investment opportunities for commercial property developers, economic development agencies, and international businesses looking to connect globally and prosper locally. Our next speaker after Alice will be Jimmy Nares, is the section chief of aviation marketing for the Miami-Dade Aviation Department, which operates Miami International Airport. His duties include forming and implementing cargo development, marketing programs in the areas of pharmaceuticals, perishables, and manufactured products. And Eric Olafson, it will be our last speaker, but definitely not least, okay? As the Director of Global Trade and Business Development at Port Miami, Mr. Olafson develops and oversees strategies to promote growth at one of the nation's leading container ports. He heads efforts to advance cargo growth related to Miami's billion-dollar infrastructure investments and increase post-Panamax business. In his capacity, he is responsible for liaisons with ocean carriers, BCOs, railroads, custom brokers, and freight forwarders. He also administers the port's perishables, transshipment, air-sea cargo, and free trade zone 281 initiatives. So that is just a very, very short paragraph on what these people do, but they have pages of what they do. So I'm gonna let Alice take it away, and Alice, it's all yours now.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and hopefully you can see my screen, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to be part of this event. And Carolina is a board member of the World Trade Center Miami, as is Eric Olafson, who's on the panel as well. So we are in good company and well represented here at the World Trade Center Miami. Just to give some context, the World Trade Center here in Miami has been in business since 1986. So over 30 years, we've been working on growing two-way trade, which is pretty ideal for the conference that we're part of today in terms of growing our trade relationship with other partners around the world. Again, we're focused on two-way trade. We support a lot of small businesses. The majority of our trade companies here in Miami, as in the United States, are medium and small size businesses. And we work to connect them to the global marketplace, to opportunities for investment, as well as economic development, as well as growing their business and selling and buying from other customers from around the world. A little bit about what we're doing. So in terms of our role in fostering trade and growing two-way trade, is the World Trade Center hosts America's Food and Beverage Show every year. This is our 24th annual, and due to COVID, we've moved to a virtual conference and show, which starts next month. We have showcased many companies from Portugal in the past. We do have a variety of companies from Europe and the Americas and the United States well represented in the show. At the moment, we have over 1,000 attendees registered to be part of our show. So if you have any curiosity or are interested in our America's Food and Beverage Show, you can go to our website, or you can reach out to me, and my contact information will be in the information at the end of the presentation. So to start, this is a little sensitive. To talk about Miami, I wanted to put it in the context of the state of Florida and the larger context of the US marketplace. So what you're looking at here is the pre-COVID economy. So before COVID hit the US and we started feeling its effects economically speaking, we're looking at the state of Florida being a $1.1 trillion GDP. So among US states, it's the fourth largest GDP in the United States. It's a fairly sizable economy. If it were a country, it would be the 17th largest economy in the world. So we would be G20 sized economy as a state. In terms of who we are here in South Florida, the marketplace, it's $354 billion. That's the GDP of South Florida. The bulk of that is represented by Miami, but in terms of a market here in South Florida, it's $354 billion. To give it further context about where we are and who we are as a state, we have various metropolitan regions throughout the state. Here in South Florida, again, our GDP, $354 billion, we would be approximately the size of Hong Kong. You know, should we put that in relative terms to give you an idea of the size of the economy, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and Denmark, and we're larger than the economy of Colombia. So if you look across the state, you know, next up would be the Tampa area, more or less the size of the economy of Ukraine and Hungary. It's also the 26th ranked metropolitan area in the US. If you look at the Orlando region, 32nd ranked, it's more or less the economy of the size of the economy of Morocco or Ecuador. And then of course, Jacksonville, more or less the size of the economy of Panama, Guatemala, and Dominican Republic. So, you know, to break it up into context, I think it helps to showcase not just the larger economy of the Florida, but also all the regional economies throughout the state and how significant they are, as well as the roles they play in contributing to the larger economy of the US. So I wanted to get started on where we were with COVID and what the impacts were here in the US, talk a little bit about Florida, and then talk a little bit about Miami. You know, I certainly wanted to begin with, we are in recovery. If you see from this graph, the purple V-shaped graph is where we are in terms of business cycle recovery in the US. So it's a fairly speedy recovery. The US is well on its way to recovering from COVID. The blue line, which is further extended, that's from the 2007 recession. So as you can see, our recovery time, it's much shorter from the 2007 recession. We are beginning to see business activity come back up, as well as consumer demand. So it's been a very fast recovery as far as the US is concerned. Here in Florida, we're also seeing similar recovery progress. So if it's very hard to see on the chart on the right, but we are the 19th state in terms of recovery among 50 states. So Florida's coming back. A big part of our economy is tied to tourism, as well as retail sales and hospitality. But much of our economy has also diversified over the past several years. And this speaks to that there's a variety of sectors within our economy, and the two speakers that are going to follow me, which focus on trade and logistics, are a big part of that economic recovery. That sector has not slowed down. It's pivoted and it certainly has changed, but there are a lot of sectors within the state of Florida that have held firm despite what's been going on with COVID. Here's a little bit about Florida. So much like the US, if you see the chart, it's also a V-shaped recovery in terms of jobs. So we're beginning to see the unemployment rates go down. If you'll see towards the peak, which was May and April, we had about nearing 14% unemployment. For the month of August, we're now at 7.4% unemployment in the state. So we are beginning to see a lot of our economic and industry sectors come back online. The chart on the right, a little bit harder to see, but the arrows that I have pointed out are the sectors that include manufacturing, transportation, warehouse, retail, construction, wholesale trade, as well as services and healthcare. Those experience somewhere between a 4 to 2% job loss. So these sectors, while they were impacted, still remain fairly active in terms of economic productivity, in terms of contributing to the economy, and their job losses were on the minor side. So again, this speaks to the sectors in the state of Florida, and we'll talk a little bit more about Miami. that remained fairly active and were not as adversely impacted as arts, entertainment, hospitality, and tourism, which experienced job losses around 20%. A large part of why Florida has recovered as well as it has not just speaks to our diversity of our economy, but it also speaks to the strength of our economy. Going back to the earlier slide, we're at $1.1 trillion GDP. It's a fairly sizable economy. But for the past several years, we've been experiencing significant economic growth in terms of the state, 15% faster than than other states around the country. So we've not only seen fairly significant job growth, but our economy has grown and it's significantly diversified. And this story, comes back to how we've recovered from COVID here in the state of Florida. Further, prior to COVID, Florida was receiving 1,000 new residents every day. That's how many people were moving into the state. And much of that, while it had slowed down during COVID, we still experienced significant population growth. Our real estate market has not slowed down. On the contrary, it still remains fairly competitive, both on commercial as well as residential real estate. And we have seen new job openings and new investments come into the state of Florida. So we are still open for business, and we are in the path for recovery. So trade numbers, again, to line up where we were. Q1 was, an early part of what we experienced for COVID, and that it took a little bit longer for here in Florida for us to start feeling the effects. But by May, we certainly were beginning to see pretty significant double-digit impacts on trade, both on the import side and on the export side. July was really when we saw a fairly significant downturn. But by August, if you can see the numbers there, we're already beginning to see an improvement on imports. So that speaks to the demand coming back on the consumer side, and both the airport and the seaport will speak to that. We've seen fairly good numbers coming back on consumer demand, consumer goods coming in. Imports are coming back, so demand is there. And while our exports are taking a little bit longer to come back online, on the import side here in the state of Florida, we are already beginning to see the reopening and as well as movement on consumer demand when it comes to recovery. And trade numbers, are a little bit lagging. Again, this is August. We're seeing numbers for September that are much better. And then short-term numbers will be shown by our other presenters from the airport and the seaport. In the bottom, you'll see areas as well as industry sectors where we've seen growth. So to no surprise, pharmaceuticals experienced a 41% export growth here in the state of Florida. Paper products, et cetera, we're also experiencing growth. These are products that we produce in the state of Florida, and those contribute to our manufacturing as well as job growth and economic activity within the state. In terms of imports, no surprise, organic chemicals, that's tied to what's going on with COVID, but we were also beginning to see movement on a variety of other sectors. Not surprising, fruits and vegetables are one of those where we've seen significant growth on imports. There's a variety of other sectors where we've seen some activity in terms of growth. But again, import sides are beginning to come back as consumer demand rolls back in. So in terms of Miami, Miami represents 29% of Florida's workforce. So in turn, about 30% of Florida's economy is based here in the South Florida region. So when we look at the $1 trillion economy, 1/3 of that is here in South Florida and primarily driven by Miami. If you look at recovery, and these are July numbers, again, some of these numbers are a little bit delayed, we're not experiencing as much of a downturn as other large metropolitan regions in the U.S. Right now, we're the 10th ranked metropolitan area in the U.S., but we do see, areas like New York, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Boston, which have experienced much greater impacts due to COVID in their economies and to jobs. So Miami's faring fairly well. Again, hospitality, tourism are a big part of our economy, and you'll see those job losses reflected in that. But there's other sectors that have done that remained open and active and are still holding up our economy and ensuring that we are continuing to move forward as a region. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Miami and where we were prior to COVID, and again, who we are as a region, and to talk a little bit about opportunity. So we focused a lot of our investments, and again, the speakers will discuss more of that, of who we are as a trade and logistics capital. And we are also a global business hub. So beyond just what we do on the trade and logistics side, which is fairly significant, we do have a large segment of our economic activity that's tied to international business as a whole and our services economy. So in terms of areas of opportunity, a big part of that is connectivity, economic opportunity, trade, and international business. So aside from our connectivity from trade and logistics, we're also a data access point, and we're one of the top 5 most interconnected cities in the world. We are the network access point. The network access point of the Americas is housed here in Miami, and that drives the bulk of the connectivity of data between the US and Latin America. That is housed here. There's other network access points that are located in and around Miami, but we are not just a trade and logistics hub and the capital of the Americas as it relates to trade. We're also their hub and their capital as it relates to data connectivity. In terms of who we are as a region and as a metro, not only are we the 10th largest metro area in the US by GDP, but we're also a very diverse economy. 50% of our population is foreign born, 37% of our businesses are minority owned. Immigrants make up 40% of business owners here in Miami. We're also one of the most diverse and gender-friendly metros in the United States. In terms of trade, if we were to rank ourselves as a state, we export more than 35 other states in the US. So that tells you about our export potential and what we move in terms of goods, primarily to Latin America, but obviously all over the world. We are responsible for 64% of Florida's trade. So we move most of the trade that moves in the state. It's based here out of South Florida. We also have one of the largest consular corps in the US, and Miami is home to that concentration of consular corps and trade representatives, and Carolina is one of those, our representatives here representing Portugal. But the bulk of that is based here in Miami in terms of representation. In terms of international business, we're the 2nd largest international banking center in the US. We're a home for international arbitration. So many of international business disputes get arbitrated here in Miami. The state of Florida has passed legislation that allows for attorneys from other countries to move their case and represent their customers here in Florida and in courts around the state, as long as it's tied to arbitration. And in terms of multinationals, we have over 1,300 multinationals based here in Miami. So we are a very diverse economy. We're not just focused on trade and logistics, we're also an international business center here in South Florida. And I'll talk a little bit about trade. This will tie into what the other speakers are going to be focused on. So again, here in Miami, we export more than some states. We export more than 35 states in the US. So that tells you the amount of product that moves in and around the state of Florida, but comes in and out through Miami. We export more than Alabama, we export more than New Jersey, we export more than South Carolina, and we export more than Tennessee. And the speakers will focus on their particular areas, but in terms of categories as well as partners, the bulk of our top export categories are the products that we produce here, computers, electronics, transportation equipment, machinery. In terms of export partners, Brazil, Mexico, Colombia, Paraguay, and Chile, of course, South America and Latin America being our primary export partners around the world, but we certainly do export globally. And our 2 speakers will focus, our 2 other speakers, Jimmy and Eric, will talk a little bit more about what we do from our ports perspective. But this concludes my segment, just to give you my information in case you want to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I will stop sharing now.
Well, thank you, Alice. I would like, I think we should hold our questions to the end, if that's okay with everybody. Jimmy, if you, with the Miami airport, go ahead.
Inviting me onto this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I do not have a presentation, but I would like to let you know a little bit about our airport. As Carolina mentioned, I am the Section Chief of Aviation Marketing, and my primary functions are business development and cargo development for Miami International Airport. as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Miami International Airport is a major international airport. Last year, we had 46 million passengers come through our airport, and almost half of those passengers were international passengers, making us the #3 airport in the US for international passengers, just behind JFK, New York, and LAX in Los Angeles. On the cargo side, we had 2.1 million metric tons of cargo come through our airport last year. And most of that volume, about 85%, was international cargo. And that made us, and historically we have been, the #1 airport in the US for international cargo. A big reason for our success on the international side and in general really is our connectivity. We have over 100 airlines that operate at MIA, more than any other airport in the US. 62 of those airlines are passenger airlines and 38 are cargo airlines. We're also pleased that one of our passenger airlines, of course, is TAP, which has a direct air service with Lisbon. Has been a very successful route with us, and we're pleased that to continue to have TAP operating this direct air service. So we've been very successful both on the passenger and the cargo side historically, but unfortunately with this pandemic, we have not been immune, at least to on the passenger side. We've been very, very severely affected with our passenger ridership at our airport. Starting in mid-March, when the pandemic started to hit, and continuing in April, we only averaged about 5,000 passengers per day, where we used to average about 120,000 passengers per day. Over time, subsequent months since April, we have been seeing an increase in our passengers, daily passenger numbers. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the lifting of the lockdowns around the US. Just last month, September, we had our best month yet since March. We had over 30,000 passengers per day average for the month. Although we're very pleased with this number, of course, just to put it in perspective, this is still only about 35% of our normal daily passenger numbers. But that is still pretty much in line with the aviation industry as a whole, with the effects of the pandemic. On the cargo side, it's a fairly different picture. We actually have been about the same in terms of our volumes, cargo volumes, as we were before the pandemic. In July, for example, July 2020, we were actually up by 4% compared to the same month last year. So we had higher volumes of cargo than we did last year. And the cumulative year-to-date numbers going through the end of July we're actually down by 1%. So we're basically even from where we were before the pandemic. We've seen some bright spots, of course, with cargo. Some of those, as you may expect, pharmaceuticals. A lot more pharmaceuticals are coming through our airport. Also PPE, personal protection equipment. We've seen a huge growth in those areas. So we're doing very well in terms of cargo. We actually have more cargo flights per day, about 25 to 30% more daily cargo flights than we did the same time last year. So cargo is our big bright spot post-pandemic. So Portugal is not a large trading partner of ours, but we have seen some growth in areas, including pharmaceuticals. As an example, in July, again, I'll pick July, we saw that Portugal was our #9 country for pharmaceutical imports, even surpassing Spain, which Spain has been the neighbor of course, of Portugal, has historically been a large trading partner for us for pharmaceuticals. So that's one bright spot that we've seen with Portugal in terms of trade. Just historically, just to go over some of the main products that we come through, trade that come through our airport with Portugal. Top exports by value with Portugal have been air and spacecraft parts, scientific instruments, medical equipment, military equipment, film and exhibits. And on the import side, from Portugal, military equipment and supplies, telecommunication equipment, clothing, radio, TV transmitters, computers, and peripherals. I'm going to go over briefly some of the opportunities that we see for Portugal to access Miami and Miami International Airport to further develop business during these times. And just in general, a few of the opportunities. I discussed our connectivity in general with our extensive direct air route network all around the world. But of course, our bread and butter, our biggest strength, I would say, is the fact that we're a gateway to Latin America and the Caribbean. So if you want to do business or access business in the Latin American Caribbean region, we really are the right vehicle to reach those markets. We have direct flights with 74 destinations in this region, and also importantly, 1,200 weekly departures. So we've got many frequencies going to the Latin American Caribbean region. And to go into a little more specifically, our market with Brazil. Brazil is our largest trading partner. Last year, we had $13 billion worth of trade with Brazil. We have direct service with about 8 cities in Brazil, both on the passenger side and on the cargo side. Some other opportunities that I would like to mention that we present in Miami and through Miami International Airport. Pharmaceuticals I touched on briefly, but just to expand on that a little bit, Miami International Airport is designated a pharma hub airport, the first one in the US, designated as such by the International Air Transport Association. And that is because we developed a expertise of logistics companies for handling cold chain pharmaceuticals. We have 5 companies that earned a very rigorous certification program to basically make them experts in handling cold chain pharmaceuticals. We are a very strong pharmaceutical hub. Over the past 2 years, we've had over 15 million kilograms of pharmaceuticals come through our airport. We're much stronger on the export side for pharmaceuticals. Again, most of the pharmaceuticals that are exported through our airport are going to Brazil. So if that is a market that is of interest to you, MIA is a great way to access that market. We also have some other, I think, opportunities for you to just to quickly go over. E-commerce is, as we all know, e-commerce is booming all around the world, and probably even more so now post-pandemic. Our airport is working on positioning ourselves as an e-commerce hub for the Americas, primarily, again, based on our connectivity with the region. And one of the things that we're doing, we actually developed a program called Compra Fora, which is in Portuguese, of course, is purchase abroad. And this program, we worked with the Brazilian government to allow for pre-clearance to take place in Miami. So so cargo that is being transshipped through Miami and headed towards Brazil can be pre-cleared in Miami, and then it can enter Brazil as domestic cargo. This, of course, cuts the shipping time considerably down by having it pre-cleared here in Miami and being able to enter the Brazilian markets having been pre-cleared. So this is a tremendous opportunity for e-commerce if you want to access the Brazilian market. And another area that is an opportunity through our airport is we operate, the area in our airport is designated a foreign trade zone magnet site. Now, most of the Miami-Dade County geographic area falls under a foreign trade zone, but we also worked a year or so ago to designate all our warehouses and all the land within our airport as a foreign trade zone magnet site, where businesses can locate within the airport. They would be able to reduce, defer, or even eliminate customs duties, and they gain tremendous advantages for logistical advantages for operating in the airport, reducing costs, and also saving on time in terms of their operations. So those are some of the main opportunities that we have to offer, and also, of course, for the country of Portugal. I am pleased to answer any other questions later on, and that is basically it for my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Jimmy. Really, even I learned something new on this. I didn't know about that Brazil agreement. That's kind of interesting and good to know. So Eric, we're going from air to sea, okay? And you're on.
Thank you, Carolina, and it's a pleasure to be here. And Angela, thank you for facilitating this meeting. And it's great to be with my partner at the airport, Jimmy Nares. We're sister agencies, so we all run under the same government. We work together on trade with Europe, with the Americas, in all regions. And the agreement that we're talking about, where you can do pre-clearance for shipping air cargo to Brazil, it also is meant to be for sea cargo too. So hopefully in the future we'll be launching additional sea cargo pre-clearance to Brazil, and then we're working, of course, with Ancona and the World Trade Center to get pre-clearances in other countries such as Colombia, Mexico, Ecuador, and Honduras. So I'm here to talk a little bit about Portugal trade. I've had the pleasure of being in Portugal, actually with your Honorable Consul, Carolina Rendeiro, brought us to Portugal for the first time about 5 years ago. We signed a sister seaport agreement with the Port of Sines. We met with the Port of Lisbon, and I'm going to show you in the next slide a little bit of the result of what's happened with our Port of Miami. And right here, you can just see the ships coming into the harbor. Trade with Portugal, there's a great potential. You can see from 2015 to 2019, we have increased trade 355%, a total of 1,796,000 TEUs. And a TEU is a 20-foot equivalent. It's a standard that we use in ocean cargo, but it's basically a container. And each container, each TEU, 20-foot equivalent, on average has about $200,000 worth of value. So this is an incredible amount of important Portuguese products that's coming into Miami. Now, I looked at the perishables. Of course, it's no surprise that ripe olive and black olive comes in. Green peas and sardines are the top perishables coming in. This means that it's refrigerated. But it's not to say that wine is also a perishable, I believe, right? If you don't drink it right away, it changes its, I believe that it doesn't last forever. So we do get a lot of wine coming in from Portugal, and it's one of the top imports that are coming in along with the seafood, but we do have some opportunities to build on that. As I said before, we signed an agreement with the Port of Sines. Port of Moderator already has a sister seaport agreement, and we hope to do one with Lisbon and Oporto coming in the near future, or maybe we can meet some of our friends that I'm on the phone with right now and increase the trade. The last slide that I have right here just shows you by value and by product, what are the commodities that are coming in from Portugal. The blue is just everything, imports and exports together. It's ceramics, furniture, fruits and vegetables. That's what's coming in. But if you look at the center, this is by TEU, which means by container. The biggest things that we get in from Portugal are ceramics and glass, those beautiful tiles, right? Furniture, minerals, and fruits and vegetables is number 4. Plastics and rubber, and number 6 is beverages. That's a lot of the wine that I was talking about before. What's interesting when I look back and then look at the number 1 export that we sent to you, fruits and vegetables. Most of that is vegetables and fruits that are coming in from the Americas. We're the gateway of the Americas, so they'll come into Miami, whether they're bananas, papaya, mango, kiwi, comes into Miami and gets on another ship headed to Sines for export. And then if you look at by value, right below on the bottom, if you look at the rank in orange for the top 10 commodities, furniture is the most by value. So the furniture is high-end, beautiful furniture. And look at apparel and textiles is number 10. It's only 44 containers, but it's over $70 million in value. So the textiles that you're sending us, the finished products, is obviously high-end. And then you go down the list and you see the fruits and vegetables is a little bit less high value, but plastic and rubbers, machinery, and then consolidated cargo. I'll just let you, I'm going to finish up on what's happened with trade at the Port of Miami since the pandemic began. Something that's been very interesting for us is that our perishables cargo those fruits and vegetables, those frozen sardines and fish, they've actually grown 4% since March. So during the pandemic, and people say, how did that happen? I say, well, you know, my father used to always say, people have to eat, right? So people continue to eat, they continue to go to the grocery store, and we're still eating those products, those fresh foods, and it's only going to expand as we work here in Miami. We actually have plans to build a $57 million warehouse in coordination with the airport on airport property that will actually accommodate huge new volumes of those reefer containers. And just to finish off the year, also pharma and medical equipment has increased over 100%. A lot of it due to the airport leading the way, becoming pharma certified, but all that kind of flows into the seaport as well. If it doesn't go by air, it'll come by sea, and they'll go to Miami because we know how to handle those products. Finally, I'm going to say fiscal year to date, 2020, October 2019 through September 2020, Europe, we've seen a 5.56 increase year to date. So Americas has been down, Asia's been down greatly because of the coronavirus started there. But I will say that with a positive is that we do have services to Europe. Our Europe container is up 5.56%. And Maersk, MSC, and Hamburg Sud have a service right now that it goes to Sines, Valencia, Barcelona, Naples, Genoa, and then back to Miami again. And then it hits Mexico, Veracruz, and Altamira before going to New Orleans and Houston and Miami. So it hits Miami twice. It hits Miami on the way in with the exports coming into Miami, or they're imports from you all, from Sines, from Portugal, Spain, and Italy. They come in, then we go to Mexico, pick up Mexican products, come back to Miami, and then head out to you. So not only can it just shows you how Miami is so well connected that even to the Americas, and as a part of the Americas, and even a route that we have that's a European route also calls on our friends in Mexico, a key trading partner. And you'll see a lot of those synergies also where we have more services, as Jimmy mentioned, to Latin America than any other port in the United States. So if you're sending something to Brazil, if you're sending something to Colombia, any one of the Central American countries, you'll have a connection either by air at MIA or by sea here in Miami. So thank you for allowing me to present a little. And Carolina, it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you all. All right. So I have a few questions. Okay. First, I want to say 1,000 thank yous. Great job as always. You three are a great combo for us in this town when we want to do something like this. And you're always up to date on everything. And it really showcases what Miami has to offer in trade. So I'm going to start off with, what is the new normal for all of you? What do you foresee being the new normal? We all have our own idea of what the new normal is, but I think it changes daily. But I think in your respective fields, you see a new normal, or what you perceive might be our new normal starting for first and second quarter of next year. I mean, this is like looking in a crystal ball all the time now on a daily basis. But I think, from Jimmy at the airport, where you're seeing passenger uptick, that's only the U.S. right now because a lot of Europe is still closed down to Americans. Alice, of course, you get a bundle of everything that comes into you, not only from the state of Florida, but also from the port and airport for the numbers. And Eric, you had the cruise ships there. What are we going to see with them? So these are questions out there, and whoever wants to start first, go at it.
You want me to start?
You can start. We'll go alphabetical order again. It keeps it simple.
We'll keep it going.
Yeah.
Just big picture wise, as you mentioned, we look at a variety of industry sectors and then what's going on, not just here locally, but also how does that relate to what's going on in the state and then the larger U.S. and global economy. I think the best way to phrase this is the future has gotten here faster. So future faster is really the new normal. So everything that we had thought was going to happen in about 5 to 6 years, even 10 years, some of that is accelerated tremendously. And Jimmy talked about e-commerce, and so did Eric. That's kind of going to stay. There's a stickiness to that, and the trends on e-commerce accelerated tremendously. People aren't going to go back to a lot of that. While we will still do retail in person, there's some of that once COVID and we see a vaccine and everything, I think there's now a huge number of consumers that have benefited from the convenience of e-commerce, and they like it, they've tried it, and now they're not going to go back. So companies have pivoted to marketing and promoting, and as well as targeting those customers in that world. Companies that didn't have an e-commerce platform to sell their products have all of a sudden transitioned to getting one. And those that already were e-commerce ready obviously have benefited tremendously from that. So what does that mean for us in terms of the state? And I think we see that in that V recovery, not just when it comes to us here in Miami, but also us in the state, is that trade and logistics sector has done well. So we do see that sustaining the state, but we've also seen additional investment come into Florida in warehouse space, in logistics, parks, et cetera, because that's we're a large population. We're the third largest population in the state of Florida, in the U.S. here in the state of Florida, and the bulk of that is here in South Florida. And we've seen an influx of people come in from the Northeast that they felt they just didn't want to be there during COVID, and they've moved here to Florida and primarily to South Florida. These are additional consumers that continue to come here. Amazon continues to open warehouse space and distribution space, mainly here throughout the South Florida region, but across the state of Florida. And that activity we've seen and we've been monitoring across. So for sure, e-commerce is one of those that all of a sudden the trends, moving towards e-commerce growth accelerated in a tremendous pace. And that's going to stick, that's going to stay. How we do business going forward from that perspective, at least, I think is one of the ways, and there's various others, but I'll stop with that. And I'm sure that Jimmy and Eric have a lot to say just on that one trend.
Jimmy?
Yep. Okay, thank you. So we're all going through major changes and trying to figure out what the new normal may be. Unfortunately for the passenger side, it's going to take quite a bit longer for things to get back to normal. Even though we've seen increases in our passenger numbers, by the end of this year, we're still expecting to be around 50% for the full year of 2020 compared to 2019 in terms of passengers, daily passengers at our airport. It's going to take a while, unfortunately. On the cargo side, as I mentioned, luckily we are doing just as well as before. But what we're seeing, both on the passenger and the cargo side, we're, as an industry, the aviation industry, we are really trying to adapt to all the changes that are affecting us in terms of the pandemic. Just as an example, on the cargo side, we've actually had quite a few aircraft that at the height of the pandemic, when there were many closures and passenger aircraft were grounded, a lot of the passenger aircrafts were converted for use as cargo planes, and they were basically full of cargo on the bays where in the area where the passenger seat would be of a passenger aircraft. So we're seeing some ingenuity. We're seeing adapting. American Airlines actually is a perfect example. At our airport, American is by far our #1 airline. They never, up until the pandemic, they never really operated a cargo only aircraft operation at our airport, only passengers. And then as a result of the pandemic, they've converted some of their aircraft for use as cargo planes and to access the Latin American markets. And on the passenger side, we are also, as an airport, we're trying to gear up and get ready for when the pandemic starts to subside and go away. We've been working at making our airport safe for travelers. We've worked very hard to get ACI's airport health accreditation for focusing on keeping our airport, our facilities healthy and creating a healthy environment for the staff and travelers as well at our airport. We're very proud of that. And in addition to that, we're also, again, trying to gear up, trying to prepare for when the vaccines will be developed, quite honestly. Whenever a vaccine or vaccines will be made available, it will be a huge logistical challenge because our supply networks all around the world have been fairly disrupted. But in addition to that, just the sheer volume of vaccines that we're expecting to be flown all over the world. And sorry, Eric, I mean, I know many will also be flown, maybe be shipped by ocean, but, because time is of the interest, a lot of the vaccines will be shipped by air. And as I mentioned before, we have a very extensive air route network. So we're trying to position ourselves and prepare for when the vaccines will be ready. We formed a task force at the airport to basically try to work and prepare for the day when the vaccines will be ready. There will be huge demands for storing vaccines in refrigeration. And we at MIA actually have more refrigerated cooler space than any other airport in the US. But even then, it will be a huge logistics challenge. And so we're trying to prepare for that new normal of, when we start to come out of this pandemic and when the vaccines start to be ready. So those are some of the things that, some of the challenges that we face in the airline industry and that we're trying to prepare for.
I think I heard in there too the opportunities of job creations for that new vaccine deal, where you're going to have more people on staff and different types of employees. So I think there's always an opportunity. We always have to see that there's always an opportunity if we look deep enough, right? So Eric, you have not only trade, but you have our cruise ships, which we look at. It's so sad to go to Miami Beach now and look over to the right and not see what we were so accustomed to seeing and honking horns at and waving to the passengers as they were leaving. What's happening there? I mean, any hope coming up soon?
Thank you, Carolina. We've formed a task force on getting back to cruising, right? It's with the cruise executives, it's with the major ports around the East Coast, West Coast that have cruising, including Vancouver and Seattle that have the cruises to Alaska and international ports as well. You've seen that cruising has started already in Italy. Yeah. It's been successful. There's been zero coronavirus spread in those cruises that are short 3-day cruises. We got some bad news this morning. Carnival announced that they will not start in November. They're going to be starting in December. So we think that the big start off will be in December. There'll be some smaller 3-day cruises starting in November. We've been working with the CDC. We believe that we've come up with the right protocols. And, it's not only just the cruising, it's thousands of jobs in Miami-Dade County and around the world. Travel agents from around the world that were used to booking cruises have been out of business or significantly cut back in their business. Also, the airport, a grand percentage of the people that take the cruises come in via air. Our hotel industry, a lot of the people that come in to take a cruise stay at the hotels a day later or a day before. So we're really working hard to get that cruise industry back. We believe that by the 1st of December, you'll see the majority, if not all, of the cruise lines back at Port Miami. And, and it's not going to start out at 100%, but we're working well to get there's a big interest in getting that back. Safely cruising is a great possibility. It is a possibility because it's be done in Europe and cargo. I'll have to tell you, there's opportunities. I said in the perishables where people are. That's increasing, and then we've seen other things where people in Central America that used to make Hanes brand T-shirts and socks and undergarments, they readily switched to be making face masks. Right, a face mask, gowns, and even sheets and that they've been selling to FEMA for the clinical hospitals and everywhere. So you've seen a lot of people just switching their modes of operation. They're actually, some of these clothing companies in Central America are now doing hand sanitizer and putting those in the same containers. So those that are agile, those that can diversify, those that can make it on their feet are gonna have plenty of opportunities. And I think that the cargo side is going to come back much faster than the cruise side. We finish a year. We're going to probably be, when our books are closed on October 23rd, about 5% down. So considering a pandemic here, that's an incredible for cargo. And then, you know, little by little, the crews will come back.
Right now, and I want to take this opportunity because some of our viewers may not know the impact that the port and airport were super instrumental in helping during when everything shut down, and we had all the passengers on the cruise ships that needed to get out, and we had all the crew members, including a lot of Portuguese crew, to get them out, and both agencies worked tremendously with all the consulate corps. I don't know how many calls we had daily, but kudos to the whole team at the port and airport for really going that extra mile during this time. I do have a question that came in for Eric regarding the port. What are the typical transit times for sea containers from Sines to Portugal? From Miami.
Well, the Miami, the Sines, the route that I'm looking at right here, it leaves Miami after it comes back from Mexico. It leaves Miami, goes to Freeport, then it goes to Sines. Sines, let me see, Barcelona, Iola, Toro, Naples. So after Sines, it hits Spain once, Italy 3 stops, 1 stop back in Spain. So it is a 17-day turnaround. So it would be 11 if it.
But sorry to interrupt you, but from our first impact, when it leaves here, the first port of entry is going to be Freeport, but then Freeport at Sines. What is that time frame? Do you know?
That's 11 days.
11 days. Okay. All right.
To make 17, it's another 6 wandering around a day to each port in the Caribbean, the Mediterranean. And the good thing is you're first, right? So outside of the Bahamas,
we're first.
that
was a deal that was signed 5-6 years ago, right? 5 years ago, I think, when we went over there. I do want to let our viewers that are tuning in here today with us that these 3 organizations that you see on this call today are really very integral in travel. When we go out with chambers of commerce on outbound missions with Enterprise Florida, these are the 3 organizations that are always on those trips. And that is for economic development for this town, which is our bread and butter. And now with hospitality down, it's truly our bread and butter. And that includes the wines and the sardines and olives, everything that's coming in, right? But looking in that crystal ball again, on the companies that you see that have pivoted, okay, are they local companies here, or are they just in general all out of Florida that are coming into Miami and kind of using the trade component? Or do you see new to market, I guess, of companies that, and if you do, who are they? I mean, who are those companies? We've seen
a lot of local markets, companies pivot. So I think that's a universal, activity that a lot of companies looked at. How do they pivot, in the midst of all this? And how do they crystal ball, what happens once COVID is past us? How are they going to be operating, and what does that look like? So there's been a lot of local pivoting. In terms of foreign direct investment, or actually investment into the state, because we've seen some investment come in from domestic companies from other states that have decided to move here. That's been, not surprisingly, in high tech and anything that's related to that sector. As we've seen, that's the dominant sector since COVID started. We're on Zoom right now versus an in-person meeting. That's the world as we're operating, and the world has continued to operate in its own different way. But we've seen a lot of high-tech investment come in. There's also been a lot of companies that have been inquiring that are also in that sector. The same thing with finance. So surprisingly enough, the world still is churning, and banking and financial institutions have fared fairly well. And this is an important market when it comes to not just attracting investment, but also in terms of lending to projects around the world, and primarily in Latin America. So when we think of investment projects in Latin America, they start off here in Miami because of our banking sector that exists here. Insurance obviously has been an area that's also seen growth, but when it comes to those fields, high tech has been the one that not only has been dominant in terms of surviving, but is part of that future faster scenario where companies are pivoting to that, making those kinds of investment, and those companies that are in that sector have done well. Here in South Florida, we have a lot of support in terms of infrastructure. I talked about our connectivity in terms of being the NAP center of the Americas, but also one of the most connected cities in the world. So they do find a natural home here in South Florida in terms of high tech, e-commerce, as well as anything on the technology side and startup.
Thank you. Jimmy, do you want to add to it, or? Can't hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Okay, yeah, just to just to piggyback on what Alice said, with this pandemic, we've seen a lot of changes in the supply chain, and I think what we're going to see a little bit more of is near sourcing, and I think manufacturing, it's a huge opportunity for a lot of manufacturing companies around the world. Because of the risk of having such supply chain disruptions all around the world, more and more companies, I think, want to set up shop and to manufacture closer to where their markets are. So we think that's a huge opportunity for us here in South Florida as well. I mean, as we've been all saying, we are a major logistical center, both because of our airport and because of our seaport. And so I think we're going to be seeing more and more of that, and it is an opportunity for a lot of manufacturers out there.
Okay, Eric, anything? Or?
Yeah, I kind of take on the, speaking to my friends in Portugal, in the past, almost 100% of the cargo coming in from Portugal to the United States went to New York, New Jersey. And a lot of that was cultural. If you go to Elizabeth, New Jersey, or Newark, there's a Portuguese restaurant on every corner, and a Catholic church, and Portuguese. But we're seeing culturally now that's shifting. And I sent you the numbers where you've seen we've increased 355% cargo increase from Portugal because we have this new connection now, and people are realizing it doesn't have to go to New York and then be shipped down to Miami. That Miami has a big market. It's a growing market. 100 people a day move to Miami-Dade County. 1,000 people a day move to Florida. So this is the place where it's booming. Even more New Yorkers are moving down here, and then the Brazilians as well. There's you hear obrigado and all the time here in Miami. So I think that things are changing and there's a new opportunity. So I would suggest that, where people were focused on New York and New Jersey, there's a great opportunity here in Miami, not only for the Florida market, but then connections to Latin America and Brazil.
So on that note, I must say that just a little bit of tidbit, we have a number floating out there, about 65,000 Portuguese descendants of Portuguese people here in the state of Florida, okay? As honorary consul, I think most of them are here in Miami, but they're not. They're constant. They're spread out. I know up in the Palm Coast area, which I finally got to go up there on Friday, we have about 10,000 people there that are mostly retirees. But like you said, the markets, the Portuguese markets, I felt like I was back in Newark, New Jersey. I loaded up my car and came back with all that good stuff. But it is important. I'd like to see more of that here because we do have a huge audience, and Brazil is a big, Portuguese is spoken in 9 countries. So it's not just when we look at Portuguese, in culture and everything, we also look at the countries that have Portuguese as their language, the Brazil, of course, Angola and Mozambique and Macau even still has a lot of Portuguese, So it's looking at those countries as opportunities. But one of the questions we have is how can the Portuguese that are listening to this or the companies that are listening, how can they make inroads in getting into Miami? I'm sure I'll be there for that too, and to connect to global. But I definitely would like to know how you guys can help them look at inroads in here. And we'll kick it off with you. Only Alice, only because your first and last name begin with an A, okay?
Yes, that was always a problem at school. I was always first, no matter what way you put it. I got used to it. So I think the Portuguese have a great ambassador with you, Carolina. Now, that's always a good place to start, is starting off with your Consular Corps connections, because people like you, Carolina, are very well connected to this community. And it begins with that kind of interpersonal touch. We are highly Latin community here in South Florida and Miami, and it is about relationships. So there's a variety of organizations, the typical, chambers of commerce, World Trade Center, economic development organizations, where you can start in terms of making that connection. But interpersonal connections, are very important, and they're very key, to doing business here in South Florida. We are big on making friends first and then doing business right after. So that's something that I think we share in common with many of our Romance language neighbors from around the world. So I think many Portuguese will find it very familiar when they're doing business here. And while we may not necessarily speak Portuguese from Portugal, we do speak Portuguese from Brazil. And we'll be in a meeting and 3 languages are being spoken at the same time. And that's kind of normal. So I think it'll be very familiar in so many ways to doing business, in back home in Portugal. But it does start with that relationship building. Make friends first, and business comes right after. We do business with people we know.
So true. Jimmy?
Yeah, just to add, I guess, I think what we have to offer as a community here in South Florida is, we're multidimensional. Let me say it that way. Most people, when they hear Miami or South Florida, they think of the beach and tourism, but we're a lot more than that. As Alice mentioned, we have a major financial district here in downtown Miami. As we all mentioned, the connectivity with Latin America and the Caribbean. We have I think the 3rd largest consular corps here in Miami. So we have a lot to offer, more than just tourism. We're a major business community. Again, the connectivity, a logistics powerhouse, a logistics center. And as we kind of all have hinted, all of the agencies that are represented here today, we're all partners in economic development. We all work very closely together. And there's even more, there's even other organizations that are not here. The Beacon Council, for example, if you talk about setting up a business here in Miami, they would be a great organization to reach out to, because they can go over incentives, business incentives for locating here in Miami. So, I think we're very well-rounded in terms of being friendly for business here in South Florida. So, I think we invite you to reach out to any one of us if you have any more specific questions, or any one of our other partner agencies, other economic development organizations. We all, want to help and give you the tools and the information to be able to set up shop here in South Florida and in Miami in particular.
Awesome. Eric?
And I would just say, Carolina has all our numbers. We've taken trade missions around the world together. And hopefully we'll return to Portugal again, where we'll be able to visit some of you in person. But, through Carolina, you can reach all of us. You have the air service, you have the ocean service, you have the World Trade Center to help facilitate trade. So through Carolina, through your visits, next time you visit here, any one of you, please reach out through Carolina and visit the port, visit the airport, visit the World Trade Center. We'd love to host you. And any questions or information, we're always here to assist.
Well, I guess I'm going to just wrap this up, and we don't have any more questions. And I would like to say a couple of things. One is that we are very, we all say, it's not just Carolina, but we all say that, we drive 20 miles and we're back in the United States. Miami is a whole world in itself. And the ease that we can do business here in languages is amazing. I think for anybody coming over here, even though people do, come over with the knowledge of the English language and the business language, it is also very comforting to know that when they're stuck and trying to come out with a sentence. There's always somebody around that can translate it for you within a second. So I think that is one of our big characteristics and benefits and advantages that we have in Miami. We have organizations, that start with Enterprise Florida, with our organizations that are here, of course, the Beacon Council. All of them, we all work together. That's one thing about Miami, and let's call it the sandbox, but we all do work together in the same sandbox because we all have one goal. And that goal is to showcase Miami, what it has to offer, and to make your transition into a new market as easy and as transparent as it can possibly be, that you feel at home in Miami as you do in your original place of business, be it in Portugal, be it in Spain, be it wherever. We do try to accommodate, and we do try to make you feel at home from day one. As soon as we build that relationship, we have to know you first. Of course, we're going to have to eat with you, drink with you, find out about your business. And that usually starts on our missions, and it ends up here in developing new businesses here in Miami. So to all of you, a sincere thank you on behalf of PALCUS, and of course on behalf of the Honorary Consul Office of Miami, but as a very special thank you from a friend to my 3 friends. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for having us.
Obrigado.
Obrigada.